Hey everybody, welcome back to Alabama Care. Today we have Lane Hagan, who is the Executive Director of Libby's Friends. Lane, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. So my name is Lane Hagan. I am the Executive Director of Libby's Friends, the father of three lovely children, and looking forward to sharing our story.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to hearing it. So soon to be four, right?
Yeah, baby number 4 is coming in February. I don't know what we were thinking, but here we go. Let's see how it goes.
That's funny. So for our viewers, if you have any questions, you can post them in the comments, and I'm going to be checking that periodically. So when I was prepping for this last night, I was looking at my notes and I was thinking, I start off asking about Libby instead of Libby's friends, but I think I'm just so excited to learn more about her. So before we get into Libby's friends, tell us about Libby, your daughter, and her story.
Absolutely. She's the reason we decided to do this. In 2014, Catherine was pregnant, and she was due June 16th, I think. We went in, had no issues during the pregnancy. Everything was perfectly fine. Libby was born June 14th, so she was 2 days early. And she had some trauma at birth, and they took her to the NICU. They didn't really know what was going on, but they intubated once they got her into the NICU, and 3 days later, they diagnosed her with pulmonary hypertension. During that treatment, she was up and down, definitely had some touch and go moments, but she was generally improving and doing better and really making progress until her 12th day, June 26th of 2014. There was an overdose given at the hospital. It was 100 times overdose of insulin. And honestly, had she not been intubated that day, she probably would have passed away. It was described to us as an atomic bomb that went off in her brain. A pediatric neurologist described her MRI as the worst one he'd ever seen in a living person. Just catastrophic injury. With that, they told us she would have just laundry list of health issues. She'd never walk, she'd never talk, she'd never hold her head up, she'd never be able to regulate body temperature, just so on and so forth. And they told us that she was going to live to be a few months and then would just pass away. So that's what we were expecting. We took her home after 38 days in the NICU, and Catherine and I are both like, well, what do we do? Do we just hold this child until she dies? I mean, they didn't give us a lot of answers. So we got in touch with early intervention. We got involved with the Bell Center, and we started doing some therapies. And we stayed in touch with her neurologist, and we took her to see him a few months in. And he said, I don't think the few months was accurate. He said, but I don't see her living beyond the age of 3. So we were like, okay, so let's adjust our what we were expecting and go on about life. The first 18 months, the first 2 years were really hard for Libby. Not a lot of sleep was to be had in the house. She was very ornery, did not like her therapy sessions, did not like having to work. And it was very difficult for Catherine and I. One thing we did decide at an early age for her is that if she was going to live to be 3, we wanted her to be able to impact her next sibling. So we brought Drew into the world in December of 2015, so about 18 months after Libby was born. That created a lot less sleep in the house. We weren't really getting any, but then you add a newborn to it. It was rough. Yeah. But Libby kind of progressed about 18 months, 2 years. We got a good medicine regimen going, and we were seeing more doctors, and we finally got her in a good place. And then I decided to have another child in November of 17. And at that point, Libby was 3, and we were told by her doctors that she's doing better. There was nothing they could see that would cause her an immediate death, I guess.
Mhm.
and that they then told us they could see her living to be mid-20s. So that's kind of where we're at right now.
Wow.
But just like they were wrong the first few times, I'm expecting them to be wrong with this too. In my family, actually, my grandmother had two siblings with severe cerebral palsy that both lived to be in their 70s. Well, actually, one lived to be in his 50s, and one is still alive now, and she's in her 70s, and she's outlived the other one. So I have firsthand experience on how, you know, patients with cerebral palsy can live a full life, and that's what we're expecting, and that's what we're hoping for.
Oh my gosh, I love that. Um, so nothing with her, like it wasn't anything genetic. It was what happened at the hospital.
100%. There was nothing that was, when she was born, they said that there were some imaging tests and everything that they wanted to do. And everything that they did showed just pulmonary hypertension, and that's a treatable condition.
Mhm.
And there were two brain bleeds that were so small that they looked at through ultrasound the first few days. And then after her overdose, they said the ultrasound was just showed catastrophic brain injury. And that's when they ordered that EEG and they ordered an MRI. And that's when everything was very apparent that everything was caused by the overdose.
Right. Earlier in the year, I guess it was like in the summer sometime, I took Charlie and her little sister Parker to a dentist appointment. I think it's called Shelby Pediatrics. But anyway, so there was a little magazine, Birmingham something, but I saw y'all in it. And I took one home. I was like, oh my gosh, I love what they're doing. And then Libby, and I had no idea what her story was. All I saw was, oh, she looks like Charlie. And
Yeah.
so when I came home, I ended up getting in touch with your wife, and I read y'all's story, and I just like couldn't comprehend like what had happened.
Mhm. It was tough. So I actually used to work in a pharmacy when I was in college, and I then went on to work in quality control. And Catherine was a pediatric nurse, so like we had a ton of medical knowledge. And the day it happened, we both had like, it was a big red flag. I had a really good routine about checking in on Libby every day, because we would go home every night and we'd sleep, and then I'd wake up early in the morning and I would call, check in, make sure she had a good night. And then I would usually get up and go to the hospital pretty quick in the mornings. Well, there was a weird feeling in the room the night we left on the 25th. And it was a late night. I think Catherine and I probably left about 10:30, 11, which was a little bit later than we normally did. And the next morning I woke up and I called, and I just had this, I could just sense something was off. The nurse wouldn't really give me a lot of answers. She was very frantic on the phone. So I jumped in the car with my father-in-law and we went up to the hospital. And when we got there, it was not like all the other days. There were many more medical professionals in the room. They were talking about medications that they hadn't been using in the past. And I had asked them, would you share her numbers with us from all of her blood gases? And they wouldn't really tell us anything. So I told Catherine, I was like, something happened. I said, you need to come up here. And she got up there immediately. And by that point, we had both kind of figured out something had happened in the pharmacy. So we asked her neonatologist, and he said, I suspect you're right. He said, but let me look into it. And the next day, they pulled us into a closed door meeting with the neonatologist, the head of the NICU, and then a director of like quality something in the hospital. And they said, well, we found an error in the pharmacy, but they didn't give us any issue. They didn't give us any answers other than that.
Mhm.
And then they just kind of, I guess I would say they kind of like spied on us the rest of the time. The president or director of quality just kind of stood at our door a lot. And she was like, I'm reading your caring bridge. I'm watching y'all on social media. Like basically just kind of made it known that they were very cautious of what we were saying and making sure we weren't going to go and publicize everything and blah, 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 which Catherine and I always said from the get-go, we had no ill feelings towards the hospital unless there was a serious injury to Libby, which obviously there was. So when that was the case, when we left the hospital, it was within a few days, we had a lawyer sitting in our living room, and we said, we have to do something. This can't, it's not fair that it happened to Libby, but we also have to make sure that it doesn't ever happen to another child ever again.
Oh,
And so we spent 2 years in litigation against the hospital. They actually fought it for 2 years. And then August of 2016, they decided, you know what, the fight has gone on too long. They had a jury verdict came out against them that was pretty substantial. And I think they knew if we went to jury, it would be even more substantial. And they said, you know what, we got to just close this one out. So they settled the case 2 years later.
well, that's so because of all of that, the litigation, did it make changes to the way they deliver and use insulin from the pharmacy to the NICU?
It did. So crazy enough, insulin wasn't even considered a high risk medication at the time, which I didn't know a ton about, but Catherine said insulin at Children's was always considered a very high risk medication. So the fact this hospital did not even consider it high risk was just crazy. So they changed that. So it was then a high risk medication, but the biggest change they made, and the issue with Libby's overdose, was it was sent as a full vial of undiluted adult insulin from the pharmacy to the NICU. The hospital did not carry any NICU or infant insulin. And so previously, Libby had had many successful doses of insulin, but this specific dose was not diluted. There were no, it just went up as the adult strength went up to the NICU. They put a label on it, and the nurses took out an adult strength medication and gave it to an infant, and her blood sugar was undetectable for at least 12, probably closer to 18 hours.
Oh my gosh. So when y'all were there, like before y'all had a lawyer, did they ever tell y'all exactly what happened, or did y'all have to
No.
out of
All they told us was there was an error in the pharmacy, and that was as much information as they gave us. It wasn't until we got the lawyers involved and we got into the discovery and all of that and the depositions that we really got the full picture. And that's when we saw that it wasn't just a one-time issue. This was a hospital-wide failure. And we already knew we wanted to make sure we instituted what we kind of called Libby's laws in the hospital.
Mhm.
But when we heard exactly what happened, we made it a point of saying, yes, Libby needs financial compensation, but at the same time, no child should ever have to go through this again. No family should have to live this like we have. And we made sure when we signed our paperwork that we told the lawyer, like, change that place, make that place a better hospital because of Libby, because of what y'all done to us. And from everything I've heard, our lawyers have said that they've had other cases at the hospital, but it has not been children involved. So maybe we actually made a difference there.
Yeah, hopefully so. So I have I've been wondering, does she have epilepsy?
They've always told us, watch out, look out for seizures, look out for epilepsy. So I guess technically she hasn't been officially diagnosed with it. It's just always been one of those things that's been on our radar.
Yeah.
Her seizures are very atypical, so they're not often, and we can't really get them on any kind of EEG or anything like that. So they've never categorized her as epileptic, but it's just one of those things we always kind of expecting it to be on our horizon.
Right. I've wondered about that. So more about Libby. What does she do in a typical day? Like, does she go to school or anything?
She does. So she actually has a pretty good routine that is very typical to our other children. You know, we wake her up, She's a little slow to wake up sometimes in the mornings, but I think every 7-year-old is. So she gets up, she has her medication routine that we do, and then we'll eat a little bit before school, get dressed. She goes to school, drop off at 7:30, and then has a full school day until 2:30. She comes home, and then she does an afternoon medication, and then we'll either give her the option of going and laying down and taking a nap, or hanging out with us and listening to music. And then, her nightly routine starts about 6 o'clock, where she'll get her medicines, she'll eat, she'll get her bath, and she'll get in bed about 7:30. So her routine is pretty similar to our other two. But she absolutely adores going to school, which is a long way from what we originally thought. Her first few years of Bell Center and therapy in general, we were like, there's no way she's ever going to be able to handle a full school day. But when we transitioned from the Bell Center to United Ability, hand in hand, they were able to do a little bit more with her. And she started as 1 day a week, and it was just like 2 or 3 hours. And then by the time we left hand in hand, I think we were doing 4 days a week, and we were doing a normal day, like 8 o'clock to 3 o'clock. So they really prepared her and us for school. And I'm so thankful for that, because that is something, her first 2 or 3 years, Catherine and I were like, there's no way she's ever going to school. But now here we are, she's in 2nd grade, and she absolutely loves it. And I can't imagine what life would be like without her in school.
Right. So does she eat by mouth?
She does eat by mouth. She takes a bottle. She can kind of chew things, but it has to be very soft foods. But we make a smoothie batch like every 2 or 3 days, and it consists of fruits and vegetables, and just a bunch of stuff to give her nutrition, and to give her try to keep her on her growth pattern. One thing I know just as well as I do, the growth chart and everything that they always put in front of you, it's like, just throw it out the window. We don't need to see it. She's been healthy most of her life. She's gradually grown in her weight, and her pediatrician's never really pushed her getting a G-tube. Now it's come up a few times, but it's been more from her GI doctor than it has her pediatrician. So we try to fight it as hard as we can. She takes bottles 3 or 4 times a day. She does not really give us much trouble. And lately we've found Trader Joe's makes these little peanut butter cups that are tiny, and we'll squish them up and we'll put them in her mouth, and they're super soft, and she just like lights up, and she's like, what is this? And I'm like, I'm so sorry that 7 years into your life, you're just now learning what this is.
Oh my gosh.
It
so
is
sweet.
Quite a sight to see when she gets it, because she'll probably get 5 or 10 in a feeding, and her mouth will just be covered. But it's another thing that helps her get calories and gain some weight. So we try to do that at least once or twice a day.
That is so sweet. Yeah, Charlie, when she was 2, like she's had some ups and downs. She was my pregnancy, everything was totally normal. She had a little trauma during delivery, but still nothing to be concerned about until she was 3 months old, and she started having seizures. And then after that, she started missing milestones and stuff like that. But anyways, whenever she was around 2, I guess this is okay to say, but I nursed her. And so she nursed until she was 18 months old. And, but anyway, so she was just fine, like with weight gain, and she ate like stage 1 baby food. And then when she was around 2, she started having like severe acid reflux and started throwing up. And then I was back and forth about, well, why is she throwing up? And then medicine would help. But anyways, and so a G-tube kept getting brought up, and she was like tiny. Like we all knew she needed something else, because she was still eating, but she wasn't keeping anything down. Right. And then when she was weaned, she would drink from a cup, but she wasn't drinking enough. But anyways, and then so she was having a really tough time with seizures one time. So while she was in the hospital, she ended up getting a G-tube, and it has just like just transformed everything. And she also takes a lot of medications. So that makes that a lot better. And then, so she ate by mouth. And then after she got the G tube, we thought, okay, well, let's let her gain some weight because she was wearing like, I mean, she wasn't wearing her size clothes, but then after that, it seems like she jumped from like a 2T. Okay, maybe I'm exaggerating, but it seems like she jumped from, okay, no, I'll say a 4. Like she went from like a 2 to 4 super quick. Like she chunked,
Right.
but then now she's caught up, height wise. But anyway, so we stopped giving her stuff by mouth because she was throwing up and we wanted to give her time to gain weight. And then now, time will just get away from you. And now she doesn't take anything by mouth. Like yesterday, my youngest daughter was eating ice cream and I said, let's let Cece try and see if she likes it. And, she didn't. But anyway, so I hate that happened because she could have at least like tasted stuff.
Right.
So what about like, what are some other services? Does she go to school? Or she goes to school. Does she still go to United Ability too?
So she gets all of her therapies through the school district, which is amazing. They do speech, they do physical therapy and occupational all during her normal day, which especially lately, she's been getting a lot more physical therapy. They've been focusing on getting her in the stander and getting her using wedges and just to gain strength because she doesn't have any muscle tone whatsoever. And she really does struggle every day to increase that. As far as United Ability, she goes to the Ability Clinic, which is Dr. Davis now. And she goes there every 4 months to get her Botox injections. She gets a medication or two through him. We do have a good relationship with CRS. They help us anytime we have any kind of seating needs come up. And
yeah, CRS is the best.
yes, I completely agree. Christy Reneker is one of our board members and she's with CRS and she was Libby's very first early intervention therapist. So we've had a relationship with her for 7.5 years now. And I couldn't imagine a better therapist out there. I mean, she's just awesome.
Mm-hmm. So is CRS the only state agency that y'all use, like in the disability community?
I think so. Yeah.
I know. I think that's the same for us. So, well, I guess not, because you probably would have mentioned it, but does Libby have like a nurse or anything or anybody that comes to the house to help?
Nope. So Catherine is a retired pediatric nurse. So I guess you can count her.
Yeah.
But we do not have anybody that comes into the house to help. It's just us.
Yeah. So early on, I knew a lot of people who did have people coming in and I didn't quite get it. But now that Charlie's older, I'm kind of like, I'm starting to get it.
Mm-hmm.
So we had somebody come, it wasn't a nurse, it was like home health or something. And she came for just like, not long. It was like 2 or 3 months. And I never got quite comfortable with her, but they could also do other things for you, like around the house. So this lady would come, she was super sweet. So I finally like relaxed enough and I was like, okay, well here, you can fold these towels. So there's a lot that they can do. But then COVID hit. And then after that, we're still not back on track because we haven't and then also it was around the time that I had Parker. So that was a big adjustment. But since then, a positive, like Charlie has been so healthy. She was always in the hospital. If it wasn't for seizures, then it was for respiratory stuff. And then since we finally got a suction machine and she needed that so bad. So after a suction machine, and then she takes Pulmicort twice a day. So she's been so healthy. So Parker stayed in the hospital with us like a few times whenever she was a baby with Charlie. And then after that, she hasn't had that many hospital stays. So she's been healthy. But since COVID, like we're just so off track. And then Charlie was in school. And then every time she would go to school, she'd catch a cold and then end up having to be intubated from a cold.
Mhm.
And so the plan was for her to try again when she was 5 to go to school. And then we didn't because of COVID. And so she's been homebound. But like I said, we haven't let anybody come into the house. And then so we've been in and out of therapy. So we're hoping to get back on track and find a good routine, but we've yet to do that.
I
Um,
understand. It's funny you mention a suction device because we just battled that same fight. Like the pediatrician sent us a prescription for one like 2 or 3 weeks ago. No, it was longer than that. It was like 3 or 4 weeks ago. And I sent it to a local provider and they were like, well, we can put it through your insurance. And I was like, okay. So they did. And they called back and they were like, well, she doesn't qualify for it. And I was like, okay. They said, well, she needs a swallow study. And I was like, we're not doing a swallow study. Catherine and I both know a swallow study will show things that we don't want to deal with Libby. She is healthy. She eats perfectly fine. A swallow study is not necessary for us. We don't think she needs it right now. So we were like, no, don't worry about it. We'll just pay for it. But then we had to get it to come in and it finally showed up, I think the day before Thanksgiving. And she had a gnarly ear infection and she was, super congestion. And she doesn't have a ton of muscle control to be able to get stuff moving.
Yes. Yeah.
So we really had to have it. And fortunately, it finally came in. So we've had it for the past 2 or 3 weeks and it has been amazing to have. I'm so thankful we finally got it, but it was a journey to get it.
I know. Charlie's first respiratory doctor. I mean, I get all of their like official names confused. She sees so many specialists. Pulmonary, is that what it's called? Pulmonary?
Yeah.
So the first doctor she was seeing, he acted like she didn't need one. And he said, well, sometimes if you have all these things at home, then you won't come to the ER if you need to. So we were like, okay. And when we were in the hospital, we loved using their suction.
Oh yeah.
And then, so Charlie had an appointment with a new one. And then the same day she had that appointment, she was really sick. And we ended up like seeing that doctor for like a minute and then taking her straight over to the ER. And he said, yes, she needs a suction. And that's the same day he gave her, maybe is it Kaposa, like for her extra secretions, and then put her on the Pulmicort. But and then we got that before we left the hospital that time. Medical Resources brought us the suction machine and showed us how to use it. And so now it's super easy. And we have the deep suction and stuff. But yeah, Charlie, and then we thought we were going to have to get her a cough assist one time, but we didn't because sometimes she doesn't want to cough, but she's doing good. And then also, so I just found this out like one of her last hospital stays. And I was like, why hasn't anybody showed us this before? But I think it's because they only come in adult ones. But it's a toothbrush that attaches to the suction. And so the whole time you can brush their teeth and then it's sucking everything as you brush. And
see, we don't have that either. I didn't know that.
Okay. I started to get one to show you, but I didn't know if she had suction or not. So I didn't. And then Medical Resources didn't have them like for pediatric. So we just ordered some off of Amazon. So, but yeah.
I will definitely look into that.
Yeah.
Because when we got it, it just came with the standard long Yonkers tube, I believe is what it's called. And then Catherine goes and looks up online and finds the little ones like they have at the hospital. They're the little small, like nasally ones.
Like the catheters, and then we have like the little suckers to just get the slobber out of the mouth, and then the ones to go down. Yeah,
we've got two different attachments, but I definitely need to look into the teeth brushing one because we just use a manual toothbrush and then try to be as careful as we can with washing it out. But there are some times where I'm like, I wonder if that makes her secretions worse because she struggles with stuff like that.
Right. Yeah. So does Charlie. And then with this, like they're disposable. So it comes with like a bunch, but we can use one for like a week. And then after that, it's pretty much trash. But they're kind of like a little hard to get used to, but then once you're used to them, it's fine. And they also come with some kind of sponge on the end, and probably go ahead and take that sponge off because it comes off quick. But I'll send you the link to those.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. One more question about Libby. Does she have a pee pod?
Oh yeah. we have a pea pod. So Christy recommended a pea pod to us like 3 years ago. And I don't know what our life would be like without it. That thing is so awesome. And I think we're on our third one now, because she started in the extra small and then she moved to the small, and now we got the regular small, and then they came out with the waterproof version. So now we're on we're on the Dartex version of the small size, but that thing is amazing. We have one for her at school, we have one at home, we have one for the grandparents' house, one for the beach. We couldn't live without the pea pod.
Yeah, I know. I saw a picture of it, of her in it the other day, and we want to get one for Charlie, but we're going to wait until next year when we move and we have more room for it. But anyway, so I was wondering about that. I've heard good things about them.
I highly recommend it, and make sure you get the mobility base to go with it, because that makes it so much easier. Yep, to go. We take it into the other kids' rooms, and we'll take, when my in-laws are here, they'll take it and just use it, push her down the hallway so they don't have to carry her very far. I mean, it's awesome. We couldn't do life without it, honestly.
So, okay. So now about Libby's Friends. Tell us what it is and how, well, I think you've kind of told us how it got started, but you can tell us what it is.
So we started Libby's Friends back in August of 2020, and it really came from a strong desire to help and to give back. I know I kind of hit on Libby's story, but one thing that was always so apparent to me is how many people had invested in Libby, not just medical professionals, but a lot of Libby's legal team spent so much time and energy and effort investing into her. And I always just wanted to do something to give back to some of these people. And because of the litigation, Catherine was able to retire when Libby was born. I continued to work until February of 2018. And then I just decided that my time was better spent at home taking care of our kids and making memories with the family than it was working for a man that just wasn't appreciative of my time. So I moved on, and in my mind, I always had, okay, I want to do something. Well, end of 2019, beginning of 2020, I finally had this idea of what I wanted to do. So I started a note on my phone, and I just said, okay, well, here's what I want it to be called. And it was Libby's Friends. Here's what I want to do. And I was playing around on it one night, and Catherine was like, what are you doing? And I said, well, I've kind of briefly mentioned this nonprofit idea, but here's what I have. And I showed her my note, and she read through it, and she was like, I think this is really amazing. She said, you need to talk to Christy or a therapist and see if you think it's viable. So I called Christy Reneker the next day, and I told her what I wanted to do. And she said, if you can make this happen, you will be a godsend to as many families as you can help. And I was like, that's what I need. Like, I already had the motivation, obviously, for Libby, but to hear what Christy's opinion and thoughts were, it just gave me that much more validation that we were going to be doing something good. So COVID did derail us a little bit. So I was ready to go in February of 2020. And I think we all know what happened in March. So we got slowed up a little bit by that. But then in August of 2020, we became official. We got our 501c3 approval from the government, and we formed a board. And now we are 16 months into it, and we've been able to help 42 families. It's been incredible, the impact we've been able to make in such a short time. I don't think I even mentioned our mission is we are here to help ease the financial burden for those living with a disability. And what that really means is we want to help families, special needs families, obtain medical equipment and devices and therapy and so on and so forth. And it really came from me looking back on Libby's first 2 years and remembering what were the hardest times for us and what were the hardest times for me. And I was still working, and I was working a lot, and Catherine was at home with Libby, and she was taking her to all of her appointments. And it was one thing to miss the appointments and have, I hated missing out anything, but then to get home and hear her tell me, oh, well, the copay wasn't covered by insurance because we've already exceeded our maximum visit. So we had to pay hourly rate. And then we got these AFOs, or we got this piece of equipment, and the costs really added up, and it kind of weighed on me maybe more than I wanted to admit. And I was like, we're never going to catch up with all these bills. I mean, it just continued to pile on and pile on. And then unfortunately, we had the litigation. And when that settled, Libby has her own trust now. So anything she needs comes out of that. But most families in our world don't have that, and don't have the financial means to provide some of these equipment needs. Like we were just talking about the Peapod. I mean, those things are $3,000, and it's a chair. It is a comfortable chair for a child to sit in, but insurance says it's a luxury item. And I'm like, I'd love to meet the person sitting in their office who makes that determination, because it wouldn't be pretty. It's just ridiculous. As a typically developing individual, you don't sit in one seat all day, every day. So why are you telling these atypical children that they have to? Like, that just drives me nuts.
Right.
Sorry, that's a tangent.
No, you're fine. We had, well, let's see, David Berry, he commented and he said, "Thank you, Lane and Libby's friends, for all you do. Your United Ability friends and dad's group are watching." And then Sharon Glenn Henderson asked, what is a Peapod? Yeah, so like you said, it's just a comfortable chair. It's just a big comfortable chair, basically, and helps position the kids.
Exactly. So it's a big bean bag that then has a molded seat that it's really good, because you can scoot it forward, or you can lean it back. With Libby not having a lot of head control, we typically have it lean back a little bit so she can just truly relax. Because she tolerates her wheelchair just fine, but if she's in her wheelchair for more than, I don't know, an hour or two at a time, she gets uncomfortable. And I get it. Like, it just doesn't look comfortable. So the Peapod is just a fancy seating device.
Yeah. And does it have something for the head too? Because Charlie, she likes to lean.
Yeah, Libby's the same way. So there are attachments that will keep it where it'll keep their head in line. But yeah, it's got all kinds of bells and whistles that you can get for it. Like I said, the mobility base is the most useful part of that thing. I love that thing. Without the mobility base, it wouldn't be as useful.
Yeah. So another thing, like stuff that I know, it's just, it blows my mind. Like, these special needs kids, like, they need stuff. They really need stuff, and it's so expensive. And then, like, say, when Charlie was younger, my husband was an insurance adjuster at the time. So, he had a good job. And so we didn't qualify for a lot of, like, certain things. So a lot of things have to come out of pocket. And with her insurance, every doctor's visit, with all of the doctors, so many doctors, copay every time, all of the medications, there were so many medications, and still a good many, and we still see a good many doctors, and we were having to pay, and then some of the medications weren't covered by insurance. And so, yeah, it was a lot. And then it took 2 years, and she was finally approved for a Medicaid waiver. That was a huge relief, because it covered every copay and all the things. But there for a while, it's like, oh my gosh, this is crazy.
So we are just like you. We applied for some of those early services. Somebody said, apply for Medicaid, apply for Social Security.
Yeah, that's what we did too.
Everything was denied. And some of the people at CRS were like, well, you could try for Medicaid waiver, but now that she has her own trust, we couldn't do it. But insurance is a great thing, but I think just as well as I do, it doesn't cover everything, and there are gaps, and a lot of those gaps are very large amounts of money that even families who are doing pretty well struggle to cover some of those things.
Wow.
I mean, we have a deductible every year that I want to say is like $3,500, and then our out-of-pocket maximums are like $8,000 to $10,000, and these are things that in the insurance world, you have to hit them before they're going to, help you out to the maximum capacity. And it's just, that's what we kind of targeted and envisioned, is helping in the gaps of insurance and helping families that are new to the special needs world like we were. We've been doing it for 7.5 years now, and I feel like I'm pretty well versed in most things, but I'm still learning, and that's one of my favorite things about this, is I'm learning new stuff each and every day about this.
Mm-hmm. So is there any criteria that people have to meet to get approved for help from y'all?
Not really. So our application is pretty straightforward. We ask that you fill out the application on the website, and then there's 5 documents that we request that you provide to us before we can approve everything. We just have to have a proof of identification, a proof of income, a proof of disability from a doctor or therapist, a proof of insurance, and then a quote from the vendor. And the reason we require the proof of all those things is just so that I can say, yes, this disability is real. What they're saying on the application matches up to what this doctor says, and so on and so forth. And then the most important thing is the quote from the vendor, because I always make payment to a specific vendor. I don't want to put money in someone's hands. I just feel like that creates an issue, and it may not get to where it's supposed to be. So we always pay a vendor directly. That was one of the things starting it out. I was like, we're not going to put money in someone's hands and just trust. I think we all know how that would go. So we always pay vendors.
Yeah. But talking about like how expensive some of this stuff is, like standers, like Charlie needs a stander, and they're so expensive. And we ended up, a therapist put us in touch with a place in Montgomery, and I cannot think of what it's called, but we borrowed a stander from them. And there's a lot out there, but sometimes it's hard to find. Sometimes I cannot remember what it's called.
So Libby had a standard that we borrowed from CRS through Christy at one point, and then she recommended us getting our own, so we did. And I mean, I want to say that one was like $2,500, but that was because Libby was so young. I've gotten a few different quotes for standers. I've actually got one that I've been working on for a family in Alex City, and that quote is like $4,200 for a standard. Now, granted, it's an adult; he's like 25, I think. But I mean, those things are not cheap, and insurance doesn't usually cover them because they're not medically necessary, which is just crazy. But that's the rule. That's just the way they write it. I know Libby's wheelchair specifically was it's like $15,000, $16,000, $17,000. It was covered, but 80%, I mean, we had a 20% copay on $16,000 is still $3,200. That's not an easy pill to swallow. A lot of the things we've gotten requests as small as $150. And then I've even had someone send us a request for a wheelchair accessible van, which was $50,000. So it's a big range. And, the average request, I would say, is probably $2,500 to $5,000. But, I mean, everything we've helped with, it's just kind of depends on the application and what our funding looks like at the time, on how much support we can provide.
Right. And then also another thing, after we returned, in Montgomery, it's called the Care Project. I think it was called the Care Project. So we saw somebody at Children's it was when she was getting new AFOs. And they'll tell you about this probably if you're there. But there's like a granddad who builds standers. His grandson used to come there for therapy. And so we got Charlie a stander that this man built for like $50.
Wow.
Yeah. And so it's good. So there's no, like, it kind of leans forward forward, so there's not like head support or anything, but when she's in it, like well, and she can't tolerate it too long. But then she's also having to work on her head control. So I guess not everybody could use one like that, but for $50, we'll take it.
It's a good option. Absolutely.
Yeah. And then also, I don't know if you've heard of this. We just recently heard about it earlier in the year, but it's called myalhipp.com, and it pays insurance premiums for disabled dependents. So that's a pretty big deal. Like it pays, like if you have somebody who is disabled, it pays the whole families. And so that's another financial some help, and it doesn't matter how much money you make or anything like that.
I need to look into that because I have not heard about that.
So that's pretty good. So what are some more examples of things that y'all provided?
So out of the 42 families, it's kind of been a wide variety of things. There's one specific all-terrain wheelchair called a Hippocamp that we've provided 3 of them. That has been just an awesome tool for some of these families. I know one of the families, they requested it because they wanted to send their daughter to Girl Scout camp, and they wouldn't be able to send her without it. So we helped them with that because they're expensive. I want to say they're in the $5,500 to $6,000 range. So we couldn't cover all of it, but we could help them get there. And so one family did get it for that. Another one of the families that received one, they had to wait for quite a while because of back order and supply chain issues, but they finally got it right around in October. And the mom emailed me and was like, this was awesome. We finally got to go as a family to a pumpkin patch, and we couldn't have done that without this chair. And I was like, something like that most people don't think about. Like, we were able to provide that for somebody, and that really put a big smile on my face. Standers, I know we talked about it. We provided 1 or 2 standers. There was a girl up in Gadsden area that we provided one to, and she was 7. I think she was 7. She had never stood one time in her entire life until we provided the stander. And we did, and I got the picture of it the day they delivered it, and the first time she was standing, and Catherine and I were in tears looking at that, and I was like, that is exactly why we started this, like to be able to impact that child and that family like that. That's just so awesome. Few different strollers. A big thing lately has been communication devices. I know Libby has one, and it was like $8,000. I've had some requests for some that are as high as like $10,000 and $12,000. Lately, there have been some therapists we've been working with that we'll buy an iPad, and then we'll just install the software on it, and then buy a few different little accessories for them, which makes it a lot more cost effective for us and the family. But communication devices are a very popular item. We've helped a few different families with just covering therapy copays. Because I know our insurance, for instance, will only cover 30 therapy visits per therapy per year. So like she only gets 30 physical therapy visits or 30 occupational therapy. So, 30 visits is not a lot. You go through those pretty quickly, especially at an early age when the kids are really trying to learn and grow strength and do some of these everyday tasks. So we've helped with a lot of out-of-pocket copays. And then a few different times we've had requests for mileage fees for therapists to come into the house, especially last year during COVID. That was a pretty popular request. But that's what I can think of right now. I'm sure I'm missing some other things, but.
And didn't y'all, and I could be wrong, but did y'all help somebody get a bike trailer that the kid could ride in?
We did. So recently we had a request for that. There's a company up in Canada that makes a special needs bike trailer. And the mom reached out and said, well, we have just a regular one, but he's not really fitting in it anymore. And this one I think would help us. It's larger and it has more room specifically for special needs children, and it gave a little more support to the chest and head control. But yes, we did do that recently. And the mom has been like, it's been awesome. They've been riding like 20 miles a week on that thing, and he loves it. The dad loves it. And it was a great item.
Right, right. And I love that, because that would be one thing that I could say, well, yeah, that's probably not necessary. But if it's for a kid, and and that's fun, and I feel like that is necessary for a kid, like
It
fun
is.
things. It's not fair for them to be left out just because they're not able to do certain things. So
And that's exactly, that's one of the main things, we want the whole family to thrive. And having stuff like that where you can do something as a normal family is so important. And, you know, most people probably don't even think twice about it when they pack up and take their family to the pumpkin patch or take their family on a bike ride. It's just, there are those little things that really make a difference.
right, right. So tell us about your sponsors and fundraisers.
So in 2021, we did 2 fundraisers. We had a golf tournament in May, and then we did a Top Golf event in October. Both of them were very successful. We had great turnouts. Some of our corporate sponsors, we've had Hairwin, which was our legal team that took care of Libby and our family. Progress Bank, which has been wonderful to us. They've sponsored everything we've done. One of our board members works there. And then Mont Eagle Strategic Finance is another one. One of our board members works there. Beds Express has been great to us. They donated a good chunk of money this year, helped sponsor our night. We went out to the Barons game out in August, and we invited some of our families that we had helped, and got to meet them. And that was a very special night. That was honestly probably my favorite thing that we've done. It was the first time we really got to put faces and names together with some of these children and families that we had helped. And then Lighthouse Painting is another one that has worked with us and supported us really well. What am I missing? Beds Express was really neat. So they gave us money just to help our foundation, but they also partnered with us with one of our families. We supported by providing a mattress to the little boy who needed help. He had a really rare skin condition. I think it was called epidermolysis bullosa. The name is, but he has like 2nd and 3rd degree burns all over his body, and he has his whole life. It's very sad. But they provided a special mattress to him to help his sores and to help keep him more comfortable. So they've been a great sponsor, and somebody that I hope will continue to sponsor us going forward.
Mm-hmm. And do y'all have any like ongoing fundraisers, like t-shirts or anything like that?
So on the website, we do have a little t-shirt link where you can buy some t-shirts, and they'll send a little portion of that'll come back to us. Other than that, we don't have anything active. I think that's really all that's on there. T-shirts, hoodies. I can't remember if there's anything else. That's kind of Catherine's thing, not mine as much.
Yeah. Okay. So this is meant to be a fun question, and maybe can help give people ideas for gifts with kids who have special needs. So what is on Libby's Christmas list?
That's a fun question. So there's a little device called a Tony, I believe it is. It's a little musical device that you put something on top, and like a little figurine on top, and it plays a soundtrack or something related to the figurine. It probably is a Disney product if I had to guess. But Libby loves music. Anything musical, it always just gets her in a good place. So we always try to find new musical toys and stuff like that. So that's her big present, I guess, for the year.
Yeah.
Clothing is another option we always give her. And then we try to find, it's hard for someone like Libby because positioning is always tough in the bed, and she falls to one side or falls to another, and she'll curl up. So we always try to find some like new comfortable pillows and stuff like that to keep her comfortable in the bed. And then I think Catherine said there's a musical bear that she's going to get that'll be on her bedside table. And then we are taking a family trip to the mountains right after Christmas. So we've never done that before, so that could be hit or miss, but that's part of her Christmas as well.
Yeah.
But it that's one thing we always struggle with is like, it's easy to come up with a Christmas list for Drew and for Grace, but for Libby, it's not as easy because she doesn't really play with toys and she doesn't really acquire things. So it is always a struggle when birthdays or Christmas come up, is like, what do we do for her? But the Tony was our big thing this year, and I think it's going to be great for her. I think she'll really enjoy hearing different music and hearing different Disney themes and stuff like that.
Right. It was kind of a struggle from, like, I typically can come up with gift ideas, but this year was kind of a struggle because she has everything. And on top of that, I don't want to just get her something to be getting her something, because when we're just going to be moving next year, I'm really paying attention. Like, we're trying to like get rid of stuff and not bring more stuff in. But what you said about the pillows, that's good. Like, for positioning, we just found Charlie a really cute Sully, from Monsters Inc.
Yeah.
They got stuck on Monsters Inc. this year at Halloween. But we found that at Target, like those big, and they can be cute like characters, but as long as they're like nice and soft. And then Charlie, maybe she doesn't hear me, but she's getting a like a big long body pillow. But yeah, like you said, they're positioning at night. And then adaptive toys, and then even toys are expensive, like when they're adaptive.
Oh yeah.
And you
if
can
you add a switch to anything, I mean, there goes another $200 or $300.
Right. And you can do it yourself, but it's a little complicated. But yeah, and books and a blanket. And then also I laid it out to show you, but I think Parker took it. She did. Where's Sissy's glove? So it's called, I didn't know if you had, I'm sorry, I laid it out. I was prepared to show you, but it's called I think it's called a universal art tool. I thought I lost it one time and I got another one. And the last time I got it off Amazon, but it's just like, it just has a hole for the thumb and it has felt. And then it comes with this little plastic thing and it comes with a little paintbrush in it. And so Charlie, she doesn't do much with her hands, but you can basically just like guide their elbow and she can paint, or you can take the paintbrush out and put a crayon in it because it can adjust to sizes. And then something, which I've done a lot of things with it, but I've also, Charlie got like a little fishing game for her birthday. It was like a magnetic fish, and I made sure when I found it, it wasn't like a little skinny fishing pole. It was kind of like a thicker fishing pole. And then sometimes when I get her gifts, I think about Parker too. Like, what's a way can they interact together?
Yeah.
Yeah. And so this, you can put her glove on and you can help her play the fishing game with her baby sister. And then same thing, like with an adaptive toy, last year, she got like a remote control car. So I also try to think of ways like, how can she feel a part of, like, with her siblings. And but anyway, so siblings. So we were back and forth about having more kids because Charlie needed so much extra attention. And then we went ahead and went for it because it was like, well, that's not fair for anybody. If we wanted more kids, and then if she, it just wasn't fair to keep her from having a sibling. So and we don't really know what she thinks, but we like to think that she enjoys being a big sister. But her little sister is obsessed with her. Like, she's so funny. She loves Charlie so much. And this is funny, but one of Parker's first words was a G-tube. Because she was always looking at Charlie's G-tube and she said G-tube. But anyways, yeah, so I hope like in the future that, Parker, because of Charlie, she's going to be like patient and caring and, for people with all abilities. So I love that. So in y'all's case, how do you think the siblings have made a difference to Libby, and how do you think she's helping to shape their life?
Yeah, that's a great question. Like you just mentioned, we struggled at first to have that conversation. And a lot of it was because we were given such doom and gloom, and we were like, why would we even consider bringing another child into this right here if this is going to just be so hard and so traumatic? But we decided that we weren't going to let that be the outcome. We prayed about it. We had many hard, just dark discussions about, do we trust the medical profession to not screw this one up? It was a big part of it. But we ultimately just decided that we wanted Libby to be able to impact the next child or the next sibling. And here she is about to impact her third sibling. But the kids love her. I could not be more proud of how they take to her, and they're so gentle with her, and they try to include her in everything. We play board games and they're like, well, can Libby come sit in our lap, or can we do this? And she loves their attention. She always lights up. It's funny. I always tell people this and they kind of like, are you serious? But she loves when kids cry. So she's going to love having a new baby in the room. But like if the kids are getting in trouble or getting yelled at, unfortunately happens a lot. She's always usually over in the corner, just like looking around, laughing like, haha, it's not me. But, I think that's just the oldest sibling in her. It's how we always are. But the people at school specifically will always tell us they saw Libby today. They went and gave her a hug. Anytime Drew sees her at school in the hallways, he stops what he's doing. He goes and runs and gives her a hug. And Grace has a little reward system where if she has a good day and earns her little stars, they'll take her to Libby's classroom and let her spend a few minutes with Libby in the classroom. So they take to her like I couldn't imagine. I mean, it's been awesome. The way I've kind of phrased it is they worship the ground that she rolls on, and their relationship is amazing, and I'm so proud of them. And I think as they get older, they're going to be more gentle and more accepting of everybody and everything because of Libby. And that really was one of our goals. Was I personally was not around, Catherine and I weren't around special needs children and people growing up. So to be able to bring that into our household and into our community, we felt like was a huge opportunity for us to do it. And we've done that. And obviously we continue to populate the family, but that will be it. The fourth one will be our last child. I'm 99.9% sure of that.
Yeah, we're hoping, we know for sure we're gonna have number 3. And so I'm hoping we can have number 4, but we'll see.
Yeah,
we'll see.
2 to 3 was a really hard jump, I'll be honest with you. Everybody says that 3 to 4 is not as bad, but 2 to 3 really was difficult. And I think that's why, 4 years later, we're having number 4. So it was a big adjustment.
Yeah. And something you said reminded me, last night we were talking about Parker taking gymnastics when she turned 3. And she said, Sissy take gymnastics too. And I said, oh, she can come and watch you, baby. She'll be with you. And it like was so sweet, but broke my heart too,
Absolutely. And it is awesome to watch them include her and stuff, but at the same time, it's hard to see them being able to sit on the floor and play a board game or go run around outside and jump on the swings. And then it's like, but Libby can't do that. So that it's give and take, but for the most part, it really is. It's just incredible to watch them love her and take care of her. And if there's ever anything wrong with her, if she ever cries, it affects the whole family. So it's really cool to watch.
So what are your hopes for Libby's friends in the future? Do y'all want to expand? Because y'all are just y'all are just helping Alabama, right? For now?
Correct. There've been conversations about expanding. There's some major milestones I would want to hit before I felt comfortable expanding. And there's just so much need in Alabama that I really don't know about expanding anytime soon. I think you and I both know Alabama is a very poor state. So if you include our financials with the amount of disabled people in our state, it's a bad combination. So my goal would be to help and focus on Alabama only for right now. I really, my hopes are that we can just continue to grow. We've helped 42 families in a little over a year. and we've touched most
lot.
corners of the state, but I want to be able to impact other portions of the state as strong as we are Birmingham. We're focused in Birmingham, but we've been able to help one or two in the South Alabama and a few in Huntsville. But like, I want to grow the outlying areas of Birmingham so that we can really truly make an impact on the entire state. And that's kind of what I plan on focusing on right now. Fundraising is always a challenge. I've been kind of focusing on the grant world lately, which is very difficult to get into. I've applied to maybe 10 or so grants lately, and all of the responses I've gotten so far are no. And I'm like, well, can you tell me why? And there's no feedback given. And I'm like, how is a nonprofit supposed to flourish and to take off with all of these foundations that have these millions of dollars, but they're telling me no? So that's where I'm at right now. My focus for 22 is to hopefully be able to get some of these grants to say yes. So I'm kind of strategizing how to do that and how to get in with some of these big companies and find more corporate sponsors. But that's where we're at for next year, and the foreseeable future is definitely in Alabama.
Yeah, well, that sounds good. So I know y'all, like the past fundraisers, y'all did something at Top Golf and played golf. Is there any coming up?
We have our golf tournament, which will be in May, but between now and then, we don't have anything on the calendar. We've talked about bringing on a junior board early next year and kind of letting them plan another fundraiser. So we might have something come up, but the next few months are just really, getting through the holidays and then getting 22 off to a good start and seeing what, our plans and our goals are going to be for next year. But fundraising, we don't have anything on the horizon right now.
So how can people keep up with Libby's friends and like find out about events as they come up?
You can go to the website. We usually have everything on there. It's libbysfriends.org. We try to send out a newsletter every few months that just updates what we're doing and what we've been doing and shows some pictures of the children we've been able to help. And then following us on social media is a great way. We try to update our social media pretty regularly. We post pictures and videos of the children that we've helped. And then if we have upcoming events, we always post about it on there. So that would be the best way, social media for sure.
Yeah. Do you have links on the website to social media?
We do. On the website, it'll get you to our Instagram or our Facebook.
Okay. And I'll put a link to the website and a link to Instagram and your Facebook page in the comments.
Perfect. Thank you.
You're welcome. So as we come to a close today, well, you may have already told us this, but tell us again how people can reach out to apply for help or even just to donate. Can they do that on the website?
The website has everything. Yeah. The application is there and it's very straightforward. Like I said, we try to make it as easy as possible. Because I think we've all been there going through the 10 to 15 page application and then it just doesn't amount to anything. So we try to make it brief and to the point. And then there's a donate page on the website as well that'll link to our PayPal, or you can also, it has the Venmo account if you want to do Venmo. And then our mailing address is on there as well if you wanted to just put something in the mail. All of that. We try to put everything on our website. It's got media, some of the media accounts that have covered us, a video that we recently put out on YouTube, and then a little bit about our board and our sponsors, and is a little bit more background to Libby and her case and stuff like that. So we try to have it all on the website.
Okay. And what would you like to see more of in Alabama for the disability community? That's the last question.
That was a good one. I talked to Catherine about that one last night because I was like, what should I mention here? And I kind of leaned on her because I feel like I have a lot of groups and a lot of support, but she honestly mentioned that she doesn't feel like there's a lot of support groups. So I know you mentioned that David Berry commented. So he started a wonderful special needs dads group for the metro area. And we have maybe 40 or so dads that come or that are involved in our group. And we do a monthly meeting, and then we have a group me and a Facebook group where we can bounce things off of each other. And then, it can be pretty lighthearted, and then it can be very serious at the same time. But I think there is probably some lacking in the support group. I think Catherine wants to have more of I think she wants a mom's group for that. And then one thing that has been such a blessing to us, but it's not very common, is respite care. Most families can just look up a Wendy or a neighbor babysitter and just trust that their kids are going to be safe. You and I may not be able to do that. Finding a babysitter for Libby and for Charlie is not just a next door neighbor high school girl. It's something that requires a little bit more attention, a little bit more training. And the respite care world is really good. There's two organizations that we've used. One is Aaron Staff, and they actually have a monthly meeting at our church. But it's gotten so popular that it fills up so fast that some months, including December, we don't even get a spot. And then there's another group in Birmingham called Addie's Army, and they do a monthly respite care. And the thing that they do that I love so much is what they do is they provide a check to your sitter so that you can use your own babysitter. They're not providing the sitter for you. And then they provide an event for you to go partake in. Usually it's a dinner, or this month it's a movie and a dinner. But I feel like
it's called Addie's Army.
Addie's Army, yes. So I think respite care is a huge way that the special needs community could grow and like to see more of. And then one thing that we particularly have been very involved with is like an equipment exchange. I feel like, when Libby outgrows stuff, where do we put it? Well, it usually goes to our basement. So there may even be one, and we're just not a part of it, but a Facebook group or a place where, you or I could go and say, okay, well, we have this Riften Stander size, whatever. We don't need it anymore. We're in Birmingham, we'll meet you wherever, but somewhere where we could all go and say, here's our gently used equipment. Now, some of our equipment I would never put off on anybody else because it's pretty gnarly, but if it's gently used, it could definitely be repurposed. And often I'll get families and people that'll reach out to me and say, hey, I have this stair lift, or I have this old wheelchair that is in pretty good shape. Do you want it? And I'll always go to Christy at CRS and I'll say, hey, do you have use for this? And if she says yes, then I'll say, yes, we'll take it. And I'll go pick it up and take it to her. But if they tell me no, then I'm like, I'm sorry, I don't have a use for it. But I feel like a large statewide equipment exchange would be a pretty good tool for the entire disability community.
Right. Or even if there was like a place, like you said, like a Facebook group, and the places that I was talking about, like that care project, just one place where you could say, hey, looking for this, and they could be directed to, well, they've got one, for free that you could just borrow. So yeah, that is a good idea.
Yeah, I'd love to. I always get tasked with so many of these other things, but I do think something like that would be able to help so many families. And even if it's like a place where you could just post. So like right now I have two people that have come to me and say, hey, I have a stair lift, but it's gently used. Like I just bought this house and I'm renovating it. I'm not going to use it. So can you use it? So I'm like, well, I'll try. So I put out a few feelers and, but it's like, if they tell me no, I don't want to just take it and let it sit in my basement or my garage. But if you could just post something and say, all right, you've got 2 weeks to claim this item. And then, I feel like something like that could really be useful.
Right. And then the support groups, I love that. So the one I started, it was just for moms. And then I kind of wanted to expand it to like Central Alabama. And something I have been meaning to do and haven't done it yet is make some kind of like a directory or like a guide for new parents who are just thrown into this and they're like, well, what do I do? Where do I go? And I
Yep.
wanted to come up like out of everything that I have learned so far, which I know I've got like way more to learn, but just like a list of, well, if you need this, then you could call this person, or, and just kind of have everything in one place and then add to it, or other people could add to it. But that's something that I've wanted to do. And I kind of forgot about it until just now that you said that. But I love that.
I think that's a great idea. I know one thing we've been really proud of is people who've come to us that maybe we could not 100% help. We can send them to other organizations that I know can help them. So like you said, those early years, a lot of things come up and you don't know what to do unless you have somebody in your corner. And most people don't always have that person in their corner. So I have thoroughly enjoyed just talking to some of these parents and some of these people, and just being able to be a sounding board for them helps probably more than I realize. And when I was young and we had just had Libby, I didn't have that outlet. I didn't have that person to talk to. And it really does, it would be so beneficial to be able to say, okay, here's a directory, here's 10 people that are in the metro area that you could call and reach out to and help. And I'd be glad to help you put that list together or whatever you need. But I do know Catherine would be interested in a mom's group. The David Barry and I have talked about it, and some of the dads in our dad's group have talked about doing a mom's group. I just think we need to be more proactive in doing it, because I do think the moms would definitely love to have that access point that the dads do.
Right. Yeah, that sounds good. I think you're literally, you're one of three that, well, really, I'm not sure. It's mostly moms, because like I said, it started off as moms, and then Tim snuck into it, and then another husband snuck into it, and then I'm like, okay, let's just say special needs parents. But anyway, so, well, I enjoyed this. Thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us.
I appreciate it. I always love sharing the story and sharing the mission, and it's easy to share the story of Libby.
Yeah. Well, alrighty. Well, I hope you have a good rest of the day, and thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.